Hello and welcome from across the multiverse. Today I'm going to have a look at Daniel Craig's fifth and final James Bond film, No Time to Die. Like For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy and License to Kill, No Time to Die is an original story. But if you have read the Ian Fleming books, you will see Fleming's ideas seeping into the script. So this would mean that although it is an original story, there is the heritage to Ian Fleming's works. Essentially, the plot is about a virus, a DNA attaching virus that only kills its intended victims. This is a good concept and it is used to good effect in the film, and it has loads of unforeseen and disastrous consequences for both Bond and beyond. I loved Paloma, the best Bond woman since Vesper back in Casino Royale. Although Paloma may have started a bit flippity-jibbity, she more than proved her worth and was capable of holding her own and helping Bond. My only complaint about Paloma is that she was in it for such a short period of time. She was the standout character in the movie for me, and the scene that she was in was the standout segment in the movie. And also, Craig finally played Bond properly. A brutal killer combined with pantomimery. For example, the cocktail scene during the fight sequence. Now, it is a cliche that Bond's first friend dies, and so I was so happy when Paloma walked away alive. But the cliche was retained as we got Felix's death, and this was the first of the many shocks to come. Reminiscence of License to Kill, Felix has a CIA ally who betrays him and leaves him in peril. And later in the movie, Bond kills the ally, saying that it's payback for Felix. It is a shame to see Jeffrey Wright's version of Felix go. He is the only character to have been in throughout the entire tenure of Daniel Craig's Bond. So this, in many ways, is a symbolic start to the untangling and dismantling of the Daniel Craig era, as well as being the first of many surprises. Rami Malek plays Safin, the villain, and he plays the role very much like Joseph Wiseman's Dr. No, so I can see where those rumours during the filming came from. The Garden of Death was straight out of the book You Only Live Twice. As I said earlier, there's a lot of Fleming heritage in this film. Safin, though, for me, was killed rather easily, but he did have a quiet menace throughout. It was good to see Spectre back as a vast organisation with its tentacles everywhere, as they used to be in the Sean Connery days. And Blofeld running the whole operation from a prison cell was just brilliant. It reminded me of the Silver Age DC comics, and I could so easily see Lex Luthor doing that. My main problem with both Blofeld and Spectre is that they were disposed of rather easily. They should have remained or had a better exit. The MI6 regulars were as good as ever. This version of M is much more political than the previous versions that we've come to know. Lashana Lynch was very good as a 00 agent. Initially 007, but God knows what number she's been assigned to since. Also note are both Moneypenny and Q, who have really blossomed into their characters, and I hope that they will go on into this new revised series. They are just too good to go. The Moneypenny character has now developed into Bond's big sister, and of course Q can be played by any actor for life. I mean, I hear that it's going to be all change for Bond 26, but it doesn't stop me wishing, does it? And on to Madeleine and Mathilde. I wasn't keen on Madeleine in Spectre, but she was so much better here as she had both a story and a presence. And her daughter Mathilde, who's also Bond's daughter, brilliant. I've got no issues with that. It's totally logical within Daniel Craig's storyline. Also, in the books, Bond had a child with Kissy in the You Only Live Twice book. This movie draws it out and expands on it. As this is Craig's last film, this probably won't be as divisive as it could have been had Craig stayed on. So, for example, imagine if Bond 26 starts with Bond, Mathilde and Madeleine having dinner together. But it provided a counterbalance. The way that we saw this brutal, dark killer going back to pick up a teddy bear for his daughter. It was just brilliant. And you never know. Perhaps in 20 years or so we might get the adventures of Mathilde Swan, Agent 007. The Daniel Craig era starts off with Casino Royale and satisfyingly finishes off with a mashup of the books on Her Majesty's Secret Service and You Only Live Twice. These are the two books that many literary Bond fans consider to be the ending of the literary Bond in terms of Fleming before you get to the continuation books. I do think the film could have been edited down to a more manageable running time, but I also think it, unlike many other films, it just about gets away with it. Obviously the ending could have ended the entire franchise, but thankfully that won't happen. How could it have ended the franchise? Well, it's happened. James Bond has been killed off. Although he was killed off cinematically before in 1967 in the Bond spoof Casino Royale, here it's for real. And yet that ending makes sense within the Daniel Craig narrative. Within this timeline, he would either die or go off into the sunset, as he did at the end of the movie Spectre. Now, the reason for his death and why he gives up is interesting. He is poisoned with this DNA virus that will kill either Madeleine or Mathilde if he touches them. And I think that he basically gives up in order to give them a chance. Bond doesn't even try to escape the approaching missiles because he knows that he will never be able to touch Mathilde or Madeleine again. And it is probably that knowledge that is the real killer, knowing that you can't touch your loved ones. Although, like many, I don't like the idea of Bond dying, there is a logical narrative and a flow to this ending, and it does work, and it works brilliantly. So, where does that leave the series? Well, we know there will be another film. And the next movie will be a total reboot. Just as, for me, Daniel Craig is in a bubble outside of the Connery to Brosnan era, so the new guy will have to set up his own style and storyline. Questions that have been asked since George Lazenby's days is Bond a code name? But why does it all have to be together? Why can't we see different Bonds as different series? For example, there is only one Sherlock Holmes and one Dr. Watson. But people don't try and fit together the Jeremy Brett series with the Peter Cushing series, with the Robert Stevens film, with the Robert Downey Jr. film, etc. Why can't people do the same with Bond? Why can't this just be this person's take on the character of Bond? Now, Amazon and GM have acquired creative control of Bond, and they've appointed two producers, Amy Pascal and David Heyman, to oversee the next film. And I'm sure that Amy and David are wrestling with these questions as they start to gear up production. But one thing I do know is that whatever happens, James Bond will return, and I'll be waiting. And those are my thoughts on No Time to Die and a possible look into the future very quickly. I'd be interested in your views on either. And until next time, may your news be good news and happy times and places. Farewell.